council chamber stretched wide and tall, filled with beings from across the galaxy. 7 species ruled here, and they had ruled for 12,000 years. The Draxians stood on powerful legs, their scales gleaming under the lights. The Valorians shimmered like living crystal, their bodies refracting light into rainbow patterns. The Kelthans moved with fluid grace, their amphibious forms comfortable in the climate-controlled environment. The Zarnathi clicked and chittered, their insect bodies armored in natural plates. The Foros floated as beings of pure energy, barely visible to normal eyes. The Skrell perched on high seats, their feathered wings folded against their backs. The Murians coiled their tentacles beneath them, their multiple eyes watching everything. This was the Galactic Council, and they believed themselves to be the greatest powers in the universe. Daniel Cross stood before them, straight-backed in his uniform. He had made this journey 17 times in 5 years. Each time he asked for the same thing. Each time he received the same answer. Honored members of the Galactic Council, Daniel began, his voice steady despite the weight of countless rejections. I come again on behalf of humanity and the nations of Earth. We seek recognition as members of this great assembly. We wish to contribute to galactic peace and prosperity. The Draxian High Chancellor Vex Carthon leaned forward on his throne. His eyes were cold and yellow like a predator studying prey. Captain Cross, how many times must we explain this to your primitive species? You are not ready. You lack the cultural development. You lack the emotional control. You lack everything that makes a species worthy of council membership. Rachel Moore stood beside Daniel, her jaw clenched tight. She had served as his second-in-command for 3 years now. She had watched the council dismiss humanity again and again. Her patience was nearly gone. With respect, Chancellor, Daniel continued, humanity has explored 20 star systems. We have established peaceful colonies on 17 worlds. We have developed faster-than-light travel independently. We have shown ourselves capable of war, interrupted Threshmock, the Kelthan war speaker. His voice bubbled from his translator device. Your history is written in blood. Your species has fought itself for its entire existence. You bring violence wherever you go. We seek to leave that history behind, Daniel said. We want to join the greater galactic community. We want to learn from you. Crystal Mind Luxara, the Valorian representative, spoke in tones like chiming bells. Perhaps in another 1,000 years, Captain Cross, when your species has matured, when you have proven yourselves peaceful, but not today. The other council members nodded in agreement. Even the usually silent Foros pulsed with what Daniel had learned to recognize as approval. Daniel felt Rachel stiffen beside him. He put a hand out slightly, a small gesture to keep her calm. They had discussed this possibility before coming. They had prepared for another rejection. Then we will continue to prove ourselves, Daniel said. We will continue to seek your approval through peaceful actions and... Captain Cross, Vex Carthon's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. The Council has made a decision regarding your species. We will now announce Resolution 7749. Daniel felt his stomach drop. This was new. In 5 years, the Council had never announced a formal resolution about humanity. A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber, showing a map of known space. Human territory glowed in blue, 17 small dots in a vast galaxy. Resolution 7749 declares human space a quarantine zone, Vex Carthon announced. Humanity will not be permitted to expand beyond your current systems. Your species will remain contained until such time as you demonstrate the qualities necessary for galactic citizenship. Rachel took a step forward. You're boxing us in. You're trapping us in our own space. Commander Moore, Vex Carthon's eyes fixed on her. You demonstrate perfectly why this resolution is necessary. Emotional outbursts. Aggressive posturing. Your species is dangerous and we will not allow that danger to spread. Daniel grabbed Rachel's arm gently. We should go, he whispered, but Rachel pulled away. We came in peace. We asked for nothing but recognition, and you treat us like animals in a cage. The Skrell representative, High Flyer Kreshtak, spread her wings slightly. You are animals, Commander. Clever animals, perhaps. Animals who learn to use tools and build ships. But animals nonetheless. Be grateful we allow you to exist at all. The words hung in the air like poison. Daniel felt something shift inside him. For 5 years he had remained diplomatic. For 5 years he had swallowed insults and maintained composure, but this was too much. "We will remember this," Daniel said quietly. "We will remember how you treated us when we came in friendship. We will remember your arrogance." Vex Carthon laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the chamber. "Threats, Captain Cross? From a species that can barely leave their own solar system without our permission?" "Not a threat," Daniel replied. "A statement of fact. History will remember this day." "History is written by the powerful," Vex Carthon said, "and you are not powerful. You are a curiosity, a minor footnote in the great story of galactic civilization. Return to your little corner of space and be grateful we permit you to exist at all." The other council members made sounds of agreement. Some clicked. Some chimed. Some bubbled. But all expressed the same sentiment. Humanity was nothing. Humanity was beneath them. Daniel turned and walked toward the exit. Rachel followed, her fists clenched at her sides. As they left the chamber, Daniel activated his communication device. "Cross to Horizon's edge. Prepare for departure. We're leaving." The voice of his pilot, Lieutenant Kevin Ross, came through clearly. "Any luck this time, Captain?" "No," Daniel said simply. "And there won't be any next time either. We're done here." On the long journey back to human space, Daniel sat in his command chair and stared at the stars passing by. Rachel stood nearby, her anger still simmering. "What do we do now?" she asked. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "We go home. We tell them what happened. And we prepare. Prepare for what? For whatever comes next. The council has made it clear they see us as children, as primitives, as something to be contained and controlled." Daniel's voice was calm, but there was steel beneath the calm. "We will show them they are wrong, but we will do it on our terms, not theirs." When they reached Earth, Daniel delivered his report to Admiral Henry Blake, the commander of Earth's defense forces. Blake listened to everything, his weathered face showing no emotion. "They've declared us a quarantine zone," Blake said when Daniel finished. "They've decided to cage us in." "Yes, sir." Blake nodded slowly. "Then we close our borders. No council ships enter human space. No human ships leave except for our established colonies. We cut all diplomatic contact." "Sir, that will isolate us completely." "We're already isolated, Captain. They've made that clear." Blake stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. "But isolation can be useful. It gives us time. Time to develop. Time to grow stronger. Time to build things they can't imagine." "What are you suggesting?" Blake turned back to Daniel. And for the first time, Daniel saw something dangerous in the old Admiral's eyes. "I'm suggesting we use this time wisely. I'm suggesting we make sure that if they ever decide to test us, they regret it." And so it began. Humanity withdrew from the galaxy, sealing their borders. The Council forgot about them, dismissing them as a failed experiment. But behind those sealed borders, humanity worked. They built. They prepared. The galaxy had made its choice. Now humanity would make theirs. 50 years had passed since humanity sealed its borders. The Galactic Council rarely thought about the humans anymore. They had moved on to other concerns, other problems, other species that seemed more important. The Draxian Empire had grown strong in those 50 years. They had conquered 12 smaller species, absorbing their territories and resources. The Council protested each time, but they did nothing to stop it. The Draxians were too powerful, too important to the Council's military strength. Fleet Commander Zek Theron was a hero among the Draxians. He had led the conquest of 6 worlds personally. His name was spoken with reverence in the Imperial Court. He was ambitious, cunning, and absolutely certain of Draxian superiority. One day, Zek Theron studied a star map in his command center. His officers stood around him waiting for orders. The map showed Draxian territory stretching across a vast region of space. Beyond Draxian space lay rich systems filled with valuable resources, but getting to those systems required a long journey around a particular sector. "What lies here?" Zek Theron pointed to a cluster of systems between Draxian space and the resource-rich regions. His intelligence officer, a younger Draxian named Kexusaran, checked his data. "Human space, Commander. The quarantine zone." Zek Theron's eyes narrowed. "The primitives? They still exist?" "Apparently so. They have maintained their borders for 50 years. No ships enter or leave except between their own colonies." "What do we know about their current military strength?" Kexusaran shrugged. "Very little. They have not engaged in any conflicts. They have not expanded. They seem content to remain in their small corner of space." Zek Theron studied the map more carefully. If Draxian ships could pass through human space, they could reach the valuable systems in half the time. It would save resources, time, and give the Empire a strategic advantage. I will speak to the High Chancellor, Zektheron decided. 2 weeks later, Zektheron stood before High Chancellor Vex Carthon in the Imperial throne room. The old Chancellor had grown even more arrogant over the years, his power unchallenged within the Empire. You wish to transit through human space? Vex Carthon asked. Yes, Chancellor. It is the most efficient route to the outer systems. We could cut our expansion timeline in half. And if the humans refuse? Zektheron laughed. Then we remind them of their place. Chancellor, they are primitives. 50 years of isolation has probably made them even weaker. A show of force will make them submit immediately. Vexacarthon considered this. The thought of the humans who had once irritated him with their constant diplomatic requests brought a cruel smile to his face. Very well. Take a battle fleet. 200 ships should be more than sufficient to intimidate them. It will be done, Chancellor. Zektheron assembled his fleet with care. He chose his best ships, his most experienced crews. He wanted this to be perfect, a demonstration of Draxian power that the humans would never forget. The fleet gathered at the border of human space, 200 warships bristling with weapons, their shields at full power. Zektheron stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Inevitable Victory, and felt supreme confidence. Open a channel to the humans, he ordered. The communication officer worked her controls. Channel open, Commander. Zektheron spoke clearly and firmly. By order of the Galactic Council and the Draxian Empire, our vessels will transit through your space. Do not interfere. Any attempt to block our passage will be considered an act of war. They waited. Silence filled the void of space. Then a response came. The voice was female, calm, and absolutely cold. This is Admiral Lisa Grant of the Terran Defense Fleet. You are ordered to turn back. This is your only warning. Cross the border and you will be destroyed. Zektheron's officers looked at each other in disbelief. Then they began to laugh. The commander of the humans threatening them? It was absurd. Admiral Grant, Zektheron said, his voice dripping with contempt. You command a fleet of primitive vessels. We command 200 warships of the most advanced design in the galaxy. Stand aside or be swept aside. You were warned, came the reply. Then the channel went silent. Zektheron smiled. All ships cross the border. Battle formation. Be prepared for token resistance. The fleet moved forward, crossing the invisible line that marked human space. For 5 seconds, nothing happened. Then the stars themselves seemed to come alive with fire. Defense platforms that had been hidden throughout the border region activated simultaneously. There were hundreds of them, thousands perhaps, scattered across the entire boundary of human space. They had been waiting for 50 years. Railguns opened fire first. Projectiles accelerated to incredible speeds, moving too fast for Draxian shields to absorb the impact. They tore through hull plating like it was paper. The Inevitable Victory shuddered as rounds slammed into its side. Alarm screamed throughout the ship. Shields are down, an officer shouted. Multiple hull breaches. Return fire, Zektheron roared. All ships return fire. But the Draxian fleet could not target what they could not see. The defense platforms were small, stealthy, and spread across vast distances. Draxian weapons fired wildly into empty space while more and more platforms activated. Missile swarms launched next. Hundreds of missiles from each platform, each one guided by advanced targeting systems. They wove through space like schools of deadly fish, avoiding countermeasures with ease. Ships began to explode. First 1, then 5, then 20. The vacuum of space lit up with the death of Draxian vessels. Retreat, Zektheron screamed. All ships retreat. But it was too late. The defense network had them surrounded. Energy weapons joined the assault now. Beams of coherent light that sliced through ships from bow to stern. Zektheron watched in horror as his fleet died around him. Ships that had conquered worlds, that had struck fear into dozens of species, were being destroyed like toys. His officers ran in panic. His crew screamed. A railgun round punched through the Inevitable Victory's bridge. The last thing Zektheron saw was the flash of impact. The last thing he felt was the vacuum of space pulling him into the void. 4 minutes after crossing the border, the Draxian fleet was gone. 200 ships reduced to debris and corpses, all except one. A single scout ship had been deliberately spared, herded away from the killing zone by carefully placed warning shots. Its crew sat frozen in terror, watching their entire fleet die. A transmission reached the scout ship. Admiral Lisa Grant's face appeared on their screens. She was an older woman with gray hair and hard eyes. She looked directly at the camera. "You will return to your masters," she said. "You will tell them exactly what you saw here. You will tell them that this is what happens when anyone crosses into human space. This is the only warning the galaxy will receive. We will not give another." The transmission ended. The scout ship's pilot did not need to be told twice. He turned the ship around and fled as fast as his engines could carry him. Admiral Grant sat in her command center, deep within the human defensive perimeter. Around her, officers monitored thousands of screens showing every corner of human space. "Send a message to Earth," she said to her communication officer. "Tell them the Draxians tested our borders. Tell them the test failed." "Yes, Admiral." Grant stood and walked to a viewing port. She looked out at the stars and thought about the 50 years humanity had spent preparing for this moment. 50 years of building, developing, and perfecting their defenses. The galaxy had forgotten about humanity. The galaxy had assumed human weakness. The galaxy had made a terrible mistake. The emergency session of the Galactic Council erupted into chaos the moment the Draxian scout ship's report was presented. 7 species, 12,000 years of order, and now this impossible news. 200 ships, Vex Carthon repeated, his voice shaking with rage and disbelief. 200 of our finest vessels destroyed in 4 minutes. By automated defenses, added Kexazarin, the sole surviving officer of command rank. He stood before the council, his scales pale with trauma. "We never even saw a human ship. Just weapons platforms, thousands of them." Crystal Mind Luxara pulsed with concern. "This changes everything. We assumed human technology had stagnated during their isolation. We were wrong." "We were not wrong," Threshmock insisted, his voice bubbling with anger. "They got lucky. They had time to prepare a defense. But defense is not the same as offense. They hide behind their walls like cowards." The Skrell representative, High Flyer Kreshtak, clicked her beak thoughtfully. "Perhaps we should reconsider our approach. Perhaps we should attempt diplomacy." "Diplomacy?" Vex Carthon's voice rose to a roar. "They destroyed a Draxian fleet. They murdered 200 crews without warning. This is an act of war." "They did warn us," Kexarin said quietly. "Admiral Grant gave us a warning. Commander Zektherin chose to ignore it." Vex Carthon turned his fury on the young officer. "You dare defend them? You dare suggest this was our fault?" "I suggest nothing, Chancellor. I report what happened." The council chamber fell silent. Each species considered the situation from their own perspective. The Murians coiled their tentacles nervously. The Foros flickered with agitation. The Zarnathi chittered among themselves. Finally, the Valorian representative spoke. "We have a choice before us. We can accept this defeat and seek peaceful resolution, or we can respond with overwhelming force." "There is no choice," Vex Carthon declared. "The Council's authority has been challenged. If we do nothing, every minor species will believe they can defy us. We must respond with total war." "And if we lose?" Luxara asked. "We cannot lose. We are the Galactic Council. We represent 7 of the most powerful species in the galaxy. The humans are 1 species trapped in 17 systems. Mathematics alone guarantees our victory." The debate raged for hours. But in the end, pride and fear won over wisdom. The Council voted to assemble a joint military response. Every species would contribute ships. Every species would share in the glory of putting humanity back in its place. 5,000 ships. It was the largest armada assembled in 3,000 years. Ships from 7 species, each one a masterwork of military engineering. The fleet gathered in neutral space, a show of force visible from dozens of systems. Supreme Commander Velshara took command of the armada. She was Skrell, renowned as one of the greatest tactical minds in galactic history. She had won 47 battles without a single defeat. She studied the human border carefully, analyzing every scrap of data about their defenses. "They will expect us to come directly," she told her staff. "They will have their automated platforms waiting, so we will not come directly." Her plan was elegant. The armada would split into 5 groups. Each group would approach the human border from a different angle. They would coordinate their crossing precisely. Even if the humans had thousands of defense platforms, they could not cover every approach simultaneously. Lieutenant Kevin Ross sat in the Nova Watch monitoring station at the edge of human space. He was younger now than when he had served with Daniel Cross, full of enthusiasm and dedication to his duty. His job was to watch for threats, and right now he was watching the biggest threat humanity had ever faced. 5,000 ships, he muttered, studying his displays. They're really doing this. He opened a secure channel to Earth. Nova watched to command. The Council Armada is moving. They're splitting up. 5 groups approaching from different vectors. On Earth, Admiral Lisa Grant received the report in her operations center. Beside her stood Patricia Cole, the newly appointed Secretary of Defense. Both women studied the tactical display showing the approaching armada. They think we only have defenses at the obvious entry points, Grant said. Do we have coverage on all 5 approach vectors? Cole asked. We have coverage everywhere, every single meter of our border. They'll find that out soon enough. Cole nodded. Rules of engagement? Defensive only. We do not cross into their territory. We do not pursue. We simply defend what is ours. Grant's voice was cold and hard, but within our space we show no mercy. The Terran Defense Fleet prepared for battle. 1,200 ships, far fewer than the Council Armada, but each one built with 50 years of focused development. Each one crewed by humans who knew exactly what they were fighting for. Captain Nicole Barnes commanded a squadron of destroyers, fast and deadly ships designed for hit-and-run tactics. She had studied the old naval battles of Earth's history, particularly the tactics that smaller forces used against larger ones. All ships, this is Barnes. Remember your training. Speed is life. Never stop moving. Hit them hard, hit them fast, and get out before they can respond. Commander Jake Patterson led the stealth frigate division. His ships were coated in materials that absorbed sensor beams, making them nearly invisible. They carried torpedo launchers loaded with weapons that could crack capital ships in half. Stealth group to all units. We do not exist. We are ghosts. We strike from nowhere and vanish into nothing. Make them fear the dark. The Council Armada reached the human border. Felshara gave the order simultaneously to all 5 groups. Cross the boundary. Engage all human forces. Show them the power of the Galactic Council. 5,000 ships crossed into human space. The automated defenses activated first, just as they had against the Draxians. But this time the Council was ready. Their shields absorbed the initial railgun barrage. Their point defense system shot down the missile swarms. Their weapons destroyed platforms by the dozens. Velshara allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The human defenses were impressive, but they were not unstoppable. Then the Terran Defense Fleet engaged and everything changed. Human ships appeared from seemingly empty space. They moved faster than Council vessels could track. Their weapons hit harder than anything Velshara had encountered before. Nicole Barnes led her destroyers in a slashing attack against a Murian capital ship formation. Her squadron came in at an angle the Murians had not protected, firing from maximum range with weapons that punched through their shields. All ships, continuous fire. Don't give them time to adjust. 3 Murian capital ships exploded in the first 30 seconds. The rest of the formation broke apart in confusion. Jake Patterson's stealth frigate struck from the darkness. They appeared behind a group of Zarnathi cruisers, launched their torpedoes, and vanished before the Zarnathi even knew they were under attack. 15 cruisers died without firing a shot in return, torpedoes away, moving to next target. They never saw us coming. Velshara watched in growing horror as her carefully organized battle plan fell apart. Human ships were everywhere and nowhere. They struck from impossible angles. They concentrated overwhelming firepower on single targets, destroying them instantly, then vanished before her forces could retaliate. All groups, form defensive sphere formation, she ordered. Concentrate our strength. But the human ships would not give her time to regroup. They harried the Council forces constantly, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted, always moving, always attacking. The Draxian contingent, eager to avenge their earlier loss, pushed forward aggressively. They found themselves separated from the main fleet, surrounded by human vessels that cut them apart with methodical precision. The Kelthan ships tried to use their superior shields to anchor defensive positions. Human weapons adapted, changing frequency and intensity until they found ways through. 2 hours into the battle, 3,000 Council ships were destroyed. The space around the human border was filled with debris and bodies. Velshara made the hardest decision of her career. All remaining forces retreat. Retreat immediately. The Council Armada fled. The humans did not pursue. They simply stopped at their border and watched the survivors run. The news of the Council's defeat spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Species that had lived under Council rule for thousands of years heard the impossible story. The mighty Council armada destroyed by the humans. The unstoppable Council military turned back in defeat. For the first time in 12,000 years, the Council looked weak. On the Eutherian homeworld, resistance leaders gathered in secret. They had fought the Draxian occupation for decades with little hope of success. Now suddenly, hope seemed possible. The humans defeated them, said Elder Tyra, leader of the resistance. If the humans can stand against the Council, perhaps we can too. The humans have technology we do not possess, cautioned her second, a young fighter named Duran. They had 50 years to prepare. But they were once like us, weak, dismissed, conquered by Council arrogance if not by Council arms. Tyra stood straighter. If they can rise, so can we. Spread the word. The Etherian people will be free. Similar conversations happened on dozens of worlds. The Solex Federation, long forced to pay tribute to the Council, declared independence. The Meklar Collective closed their borders and refused Council inspection ships. The Telon Unity demanded representation in Council decisions. The galaxy was fracturing and the Council knew it. Vex Carthon stood before the full Council assembly, his scales dull with stress and anger. Around him the representatives of the 7 species argued and flamed each other. This is the Draxian Empire's fault, accused Threshmock. Your arrogance started this. Or, the Kelthans voted for military action. Vex Carthon shot back. Do not pretend your hands are clean. Enough, Crystal Mind Luxara's voice rang like struck bells. Blame will not solve our problems. We must decide what to do next. We continue the war, insisted the Zarnathi representative, mandibles clicking with agitation. We gather more ships. We attack again. We cannot let this stand. We have already lost 8,000 ships, the Foros representative pulsed. How many more must die before we acknowledge reality? Reality? Vex Carthon turned his rage on the Foros. The reality is that we are the Galactic Council. We have ruled for 12,000 years. We cannot, we will not, allow a single upstart species to defy us. Before anyone could respond, an alert sounded through the chamber. A human ship had entered Council space and was requesting permission to dock. A human ship? Kreshtak's wings ruffled with surprise. They have never come here before. It is probably carrying their surrender, Vex Carthon said with satisfaction. They have realized they cannot stand against us indefinitely. But it was not a surrender. Ambassador Victoria Hayes walked into the Council chamber an hour later, flanked by 6 human Marines in full armor. Captain Stephen Walsh led the escort, his hand never far from his weapon. The Marines took positions around Victoria, making it clear she was not asking for permission to be here. The Council members stared at this display of audacity. No one had ever entered the chamber with armed guards before. No one had ever dared. I am Ambassador Victoria Hayes, representing the nations of Earth and humanity as a whole. Her voice was clear and confident. I come to offer terms for peace. Terms? Vex Carthon rose from his throne. You come to offer us terms? You forget your place, human. No, Chancellor. You forgot ours? Victoria walked to the center of the chamber unafraid. For 50 years you ignored us. You dismissed us. You declared us a quarantine zone and thought we would simply accept our cage. When we defended ourselves, you called it an act of war. You sent 8,000 ships to destroy us. Those ships are now debris. I dare to speak the truth, something this Council has not heard in a very long time. Victoria's eyes swept across all 7 species. You have ruled through fear and superior technology. But your technology is no longer superior. Your fear no longer works. The galaxy is changing and you can either change with it or be swept away. Crystal Mind Luxara leaned forward. What are your terms, Ambassador? 3 conditions. First, humanity will be recognized as a sovereign power, equal to any Council member. No more quarantine zones. No more restrictions. Unacceptable, Vexa Carthon declared. Victoria ignored him and continued. Second, all species will be free to trade and interact with humanity without Council interference. We will not be isolated again. Also unacceptable. Third, the Galactic Council will issue a formal apology for its unprovoked military aggression against human space. The chamber exploded with outrage. 7 species shouted at once, their translators creating a cacophony of anger and indignation. Victoria waited calmly for the noise to die down. Captain Walsh and his Marines stood ready, hands on weapons, prepared for anything. "And if we refuse?" Vex Carthon asked when order was finally restored. "What then, Ambassador? Will you attack us? Will you try to conquer the galaxy?" "No, we have no interest in conquest. But we will not allow tyranny to continue when we have the power to stop it." Victoria's expression remained neutral, but her words carried weight. "You have oppressed smaller species for thousands of years. You have crushed any who dared to question your authority. That ends now. You threaten the entire council? I state facts. Your armada failed. Your military superiority is broken. Right now, dozens of species are watching this moment. They are waiting to see if the council will accept change peacefully, or if you will force change to come violently." Thresmock surged forward. "This is intolerable. We should arrest her now." The human Marines raised their weapons. The movement was smooth, professional, and absolutely clear in its meaning. "That would be unwise," Captain Walsh said quietly. The council members looked at each other. They had never been in this position before. For 12,000 years they had dictated terms. Now someone was dictating to them. "We need time to discuss this," Luxara said carefully. "Ambassador Hayes, would you be willing to wait while the council debates your terms?" "I will wait 3 days," Victoria replied. "No longer." She turned and walked out, her Marine escort following. The chamber doors closed behind them. The moment they were gone, chaos erupted again. The council members argued for hours. Some wanted to refuse outright. Some wanted to continue the war. Some wanted to accept the terms. But over those 3 days, more news reached the council. The Etherian rebellion had gone from scattered resistance to open warfare. The Solex Federation had seized council trade stations. 12 minor species had banded together to form a new alliance, explicitly requesting human protection. The galaxy was slipping from council control, and everyone knew it. On the 3rd day, the council reconvened. The vote was close. The Draxians voted no. The Kelthans voted no. The Zarnathian Mirians voted no. But the Valorians, Skrell, and Foros voted yes. With the council deadlocked, the oldest rule of council law came into effect. In times of deadlock, the member species with the longest council service held the deciding vote. Crystal Mind Luxara spoke for the Valorians. "We accept Ambassador Hayes' terms. All 3 conditions." Vex Carthon looked like he wanted to attack someone. "This is a betrayal. This is survival," Luxara replied. "The galaxy has changed. We can either adapt or die." The formal agreement was signed the next day. Humanity was recognized as a sovereign power. Trade restrictions were lifted, and the Galactic Council issued an apology, the first in its 12,000-year history. Victoria stood in the council chamber one last time, watching the signatures appear on the holographic document. Captain Walsh stood beside her. "Do you think they mean it?" he asked quietly. "No, but it doesn't matter. We've proven we can defend ourselves. We've shown the galaxy that the council can be challenged. That's enough for now." She looked at the council members, seeing the mixture of fear, anger, and resignation on their alien faces. "The hard part comes next," she said. "Building a new order. Making sure this peace lasts. And if it doesn't?" Victoria's expression hardened. "Then we remind them again why no one crosses into human space." 5 years after the Battle of Human Space, the galaxy had transformed in ways no one could have predicted. The old order was dying. A new order struggled to be born. The Galactic Council still existed, but it no longer ruled absolutely. Its chambers still hosted representatives from 7 species, but now those representatives had to listen to voices they had ignored for millennia. Admiral Daniel Cross stood at the window of his quarters on the council station, looking out at the ships docked nearby. Human ships, Etherian ships, Solex ships, Tellan ships, ships from 73 different species, all part of the new alliance humanity had helped create. The Free Species Alliance, they called it, a coalition of worlds that refused to bow to council authority. Daniel served as Earth's primary representative, a position that felt both powerful and heavy. "Admiral Cross, the council session begins in 10 minutes. His aide, Lieutenant Amy Foster, reminded him. Daniel nodded, adjusting his uniform. The same uniform he had worn when he first came to this station, begging for recognition. Now he wore it with the weight of victory and the burden of responsibility. The council chamber was different now. Additional seats had been added for FSA representatives. The 7 original species no longer sat alone on their high thrones. They shared the floor with others. Vexacarthon looked older, his scales faded and dull. 5 years of watching his empire's influence crumble had taken their toll. He glared at Daniel as the human admiral took his seat. "We have gathered to discuss the Draxian petition," Crystal Mind Luxara announced. Her crystalline form shimmered with diplomatic neutrality. "High Chancellor Vex Carthon wishes to address the Assembly." Vex Carthon stood slowly. "The Draxian Empire has served the Galactic Council for 8,000 years. We have maintained order. We have enforced peace. We have sacrificed much for the good of all species." He paused, his yellow eyes scanning the chamber. "Now we ask for support. The Etherian Rebellion has seized 12 Draxian worlds. They attack our merchant vessels. They raid our colonies. This is unacceptable." Elder Tyra stood from her seat among the FSA representatives. She was older now, her once dark skin weathered by years of guerrilla warfare, but her eyes burned with righteous anger. "The Draxian Empire enslaved my people for 300 years. They stole our resources. They killed those who resisted. They crushed our culture beneath their boots. And now they ask for sympathy?" Her voice rose. "Now they cry about losing worlds they had no right to take in the first place?" The chamber erupted in argument. Draxian supporters shouted at Etherian supporters. Council loyalists clashed with FSA members. Daniel let them argue for a moment, then stood. His movement brought silence. Everyone wanted to hear what the human admiral would say. "The Draxian Empire is reaping what it sowed," Daniel said simply. "For centuries you took what you wanted by force. Now force is being used against you. Does it hurt? Of course. Is it unjust? Perhaps. But it is the natural consequence of your actions." "You support terrorism?" Vex Carthon demanded. "I support freedom. The Itherian people have the right to determine their own fate. If that means fighting for their independence, so be it. They are killing innocents." Daniel's expression hardened. "So did you. For 300 years." The truth of that statement hung in the air like smoke. No one could deny it. The Draxian occupation had been brutal, documented by hundreds of sources. Crystal Mind Luxara spoke carefully. "Perhaps we can find a middle path, a negotiated settlement. The Etherians gain their independence. The Draxians withdraw peacefully. No more bloodshed. The Etherians must be punished for their rebellion," Vex Carthon insisted. "Then there will be no peace," Elder Tyra replied. "And the war will continue until your empire crumbles completely." Far from the council station, on the borders of what had once been undisputed Draxian space, Commander Jennifer Blake commanded the FSS Liberty. She was the daughter of Admiral Henry Blake, who had passed away 3 years earlier. She inherited his strategic mind and his unwavering dedication to protecting human interests. The Liberty was humanity's newest dreadnought, a ship that represented everything humans had learned about warfare in 55 years of isolation and development. Its weapons could crack planets. Its shields could withstand anything the Council had. "Commander, we're detecting unauthorized Draxian fleet movements," Lieutenant Gary Hill reported from the sensor station. "They're moving toward Etherian space. Looks like a battle group. At least 50 ships." Jennifer studied the tactical display. The Draxians were making a move while the Council debated, trying to crush the rebellion by force while diplomacy kept their opponents talking. "Send a message to the Draxian fleet. Tell them to turn back." Message sent. No response. Jennifer had expected that. The Draxians were desperate. Desperate powers made dangerous choices. "Take us to intercept course. Alert all FSA ships in the region, and send a priority message to Admiral Cross at the Council." The Liberty moved to intercept, joined by 6 other human ships that had been patrolling nearby. They positioned themselves between the Draxian fleet and Witherian space. The Draxian commander, an officer named Torvex, sent an angry transmission. "Human vessel, move aside. This is Draxian internal affairs." Jennifer appeared on his screen, her expression calm but her eyes cold. "This stopped being internal when you threatened a member of the Free Species Alliance. Turn back, Commander. Last warning. You would start a war over primitives who attack their rightful rulers? I would honor the commitments my nation has made. The Etherians are under FSA protection. You will not touch them." Torvex cut the transmission. His fleet prepared for battle. At the council station, Daniel received Jennifer's emergency message in the middle of the debate. He read it quickly, then stood again. "The Draxian Empire has dispatched a military fleet to attack Etherian space. They are doing this while we sit here discussing peace. This is exactly the kind of arrogance that started this entire conflict. Vex Carthon rose, his voice shaking with rage. How dare you? That fleet is responding to Itherian aggression. That fleet is trying to reconquer worlds that no longer want to be conquered. And it will fail, just as your previous fleets failed. The council chamber exploded into chaos again, but this time something was different. The FSA representatives stood together, united. The council members looked divided, uncertain. Crystal-Mind Luxara raised her voice above the din. We must stop this immediately. Both sides must stand down. The humans started this, Vex Carthon shouted. No, said Luxara quietly. We did, when we dismissed humanity 55 years ago. When we caged them and called them primitives. When we attacked them for defending their borders. We started this chain of events. And now we must deal with the consequences. Back at the border, the two fleets faced each other. Jennifer had hoped it would not come to this. But she had her orders, and more importantly, she had her principles. All ships weapons free. If they fire, we respond with maximum force. But we do not fire first, the Draxian fleet advanced. For a moment, it seemed war was inevitable. Then Torvex received a message from his government. Stand down. Return immediately. Vex Carthon had blinked. Faced with the choice between continuing a war they could not win or accepting the new reality, the Draxians had chosen survival. The Draxian fleet turned back. Jennifer watched them go, letting out a breath she had not realized she was holding. Stand down from battle stations, she ordered, but maintain patrol. They might try again. At the council station, an agreement was finally reached. The Itherians would gain full independence. The Draxians would withdraw from occupied territories. In exchange, the Itherians would cease attacks on Draxian civilian targets. It was not perfect. It would not heal all wounds. But it was a start. Daniel stood before the council as the agreement was signed. He thought about the long journey that had brought humanity to this moment. From rejection to isolation to war to this fragile peace. The galaxy has changed, he said to the assembled representatives. Power no longer comes from tradition or ancient authority. It comes from the will to defend what is right. It comes from the courage to stand against injustice even when the cost is high. He looked directly at Vex Carthon. Humanity did not seek this role. We wanted only to be left in peace. But you forced us to become something more. You forced us to become protectors, defenders, champions of those who cannot defend themselves. And now, Luxara asked, now we build something better. A galaxy where might does not make right, where all species are truly equal, where no one is caged or conquered simply because they are weaker. It was an idealistic vision, perhaps impossible. But as Daniel looked around the chamber, seeing representatives from dozens of species sitting together, he felt hope. 20 years after the reformation of the Galactic Council, the galaxy continued its slow transformation. Change came neither quickly nor easily, but it came nonetheless. Earth had grown into something its founders would barely recognize. Cities stretched across entire continents. Orbital stations circled the planet like jewels. Humanity numbered in the hundreds of billions, spread across 42 worlds now instead of 17. President Karen Wright stood at the podium in the United Earth Assembly, preparing to deliver her annual address. She was the first president elected to represent all of humanity, not just individual nations. The unification had taken decades, but the threat of galactic conflict had finally pushed humanity to set aside old divisions. My fellow humans, she began, her voice carrying across the massive chamber and broadcast to every human world. 20 years ago, we stood alone against the greatest military force the galaxy had known. We won that battle not through hatred or desire for conquest, but through our refusal to kneel. She paused, letting her words sink in. Today we stand at a crossroads. The galaxy looks to us for leadership. The Free Species Alliance has grown to include 143 different species. They trust us. They rely on us, and we must decide what kind of protectors we will be. In the audience, Admiral Daniel Cross listened with mixed feelings. He had served humanity for 40 years now. He had seen them go from rejected supplicants to galactic power. But he had also seen the costs, the responsibility, the endless challenges. After the speech, Daniel met with President Wright in her private office. Jennifer Blake was there too, now a full admiral herself and commander of the entire Terran Defense Fleet. The Draxian situation is getting worse, Jennifer reported. Vex Carthon died last month. His son, Krell Carthon, has taken power. He's even more bitter than his father was. Do we think he'll try something? Wright asked. He's been rebuilding their military in secret. Our intelligence suggests he's developing new weapons. Director Alan Cross has agents tracking their programs. Alan Cross was no relation to Daniel, despite sharing a last name. He had risen to lead Earth's intelligence services through skill and ruthless efficiency. He entered the office now carrying a data pad. Madam President, we have a problem. The Draxians have been making contact with fringe groups, extremists who still believe in council supremacy. They're building an alliance, Daniel leaned forward. How serious is this? Serious enough. They have maybe 1,000 ships combined. Not enough to threaten us directly, but enough to cause real damage to FSA members who don't have our level of defense. Wright considered this. Options? We could confront them directly, Jennifer suggested. Send a fleet to Draxian space and make it clear we know what they're planning. That might push them to act before they're ready, Alan countered. Or it might give them justification to play victim, rally support among species who still resent our influence. Then we wait, Daniel said quietly. We watch. We prepare, and when they make their move, we respond decisively. Far from Earth, on the border monitoring station Deep Watch, Captain Peter Gray watched the sensor displays with growing concern. Deep Watch sat at the edge of human space, one of hundreds of stations that maintained constant vigilance. Captain, we're detecting unusual activity in the Fringe Nebula, reported Lieutenant Sarah Brooks. Multiple ship signatures. They're trying to mask their emissions, but we're picking them up anyway. Peter studied the data. The Fringe Nebula was technically neutral space, but it bordered both human territory and the remnants of Draxian space. If someone was gathering ships there, it was not for peaceful purposes. How many ships? At least 800? Maybe more. The nebula interference makes exact counts difficult. Send a priority alert to Fleet Command, and activate defensive protocols for all stations in this sector. The message reached Jennifer's headquarters within minutes. She assembled her senior staff immediately. It's happening, she told them. The Draxians are making their move. They're gathering a fleet in the Fringe Nebula, probably planning to strike at multiple FSA targets simultaneously. Commander Nathan Price, her tactical officer, brought up a star map. If they hit our weaker allies, they could reclaim territory and make us look unable to protect our friends. It would damage our credibility. Then we don't let them hit anyone, Jennifer said firmly. We intercept them in the nebula. We end this threat before it begins. Fighting inside a nebula negates many of our advantages, cautioned Captain Louise Martin, commander of the carrier group. Sensors are limited. Communications are difficult. It's one of the few environments where our tech edge matters less. Then we'll have to rely on what makes us truly superior, Jennifer replied. Our adaptability, our creativity, our refusal to accept defeat. The Terran Defense Fleet moved into position. 40 capital ships, 200 cruisers and destroyers, and countless support vessels. It was a fraction of humanity's full military strength, but Jennifer believed it would be enough. They entered the Fringe Nebula cautiously. The swirling gases and exotic particles played havoc with sensors. Ships that were kilometers away might be invisible. Enemies could be anywhere. All ships maintain formation but increase spacing, Jennifer ordered from her flagship, the FSS Resolute. Stay alert. Trust your instincts, the Draxian fleet was waiting for them. Krell Carthan had learned from his father's mistakes. He had chosen his battlefield carefully, negating human technological advantages. His fleet was larger than expected. Over 1,000 ships gathered from extremist groups across the galaxy. Attention, human fleet. Krell Carthan's voice boomed across the communication channels. You have grown arrogant. You believe yourselves invincible. Today we will show the galaxy that humans can bleed, that humans can die, that human dominance is an illusion. Jennifer did not respond to the taunt. Instead, she gave her orders calmly and clearly. All ships weapons free. Alpha pattern. Show them what human determination looks like. The battle began. It was unlike the previous fights. Inside the nebula, the careful tactics and long-range precision that humans relied on mattered less. This was close-quarters fighting, brutal and chaotic. Captain Nicole Barnes, now commanding a heavy cruiser, found herself in a swirling firefight with 3 Draxian vessels. Her ship shook with impacts. Alarms screamed. But she kept her crew focused. Port batteries, continuous fire. Engineering, I need those shields back up. Helm, get us out of their crossfire. Her ship took damage but gave back twice as much. Two of the Draxian ships exploded. The third retreated into the gas clouds. Throughout the nebula, similar battles raged. Human ships took losses. The FSS Courageous was destroyed with all hands. The FSS Determined lost half its crew when a torpedo penetrated their reactor shielding. The FSS Vigilant went silent after engaging 4 enemy vessels at once. But humanity did not break, did not retreat, did not falter. Commander Jake Patterson, still leading stealth operations after all these years, found a way to use the nebula to human advantage. His frigates used the gas clouds as cover, striking from unexpected angles and vanishing again before the enemy could respond. "They can't see us any better than we can see them," he told his squadron. "But we're better at fighting blind. Use it. Become the ghost in the machine." Hours into the battle, the tide began to turn. Draxian ships designed for straightforward combat struggled with the chaos. Human ships, crewed by people who had spent decades training for every possible scenario, adapted and overcame. Krell Carthon watched his fleet fall apart around him. He had been so certain, so sure that this would be the day humanity's luck ran out. "All ships retreat," he finally ordered, his voice hollow with defeat. "Fall back to Rally Point Gamma." But Jennifer had anticipated this. She had positioned ships at every likely escape route. The Draxians who tried to flee found themselves trapped, forced to surrender or die. Krell Carthon's flagship was cornered by the Resolute and 3 other human vessels. Jennifer gave him one chance: surrender your ship, face trial for your crimes, or die here in this nebula forgotten by history. Krell Carthon chose surrender, not out of wisdom but out of fear. The kind of fear his father had once inspired in others now turned back on him. The Battle of Fringe Nebula ended with 400 Draxian ships destroyed and 600 captured. Humanity lost 23 ships, and that loss hurt. Each ship represented lives, families, people who had trusted humanity to protect them and died in that service. Jennifer stood in the memorial service on Earth 2 weeks later. The names of the fallen scrolled past on holographic displays. 3,417 people, engineers, pilots, gunners, medics, cooks, all gone. President Wright spoke at the service. They died defending not just humanity, but the principle that all species deserve freedom. They died so that tyrants like Krell Carthon could not rebuild empires of oppression. They died as heroes. In the aftermath, the galaxy settled into a new equilibrium. The Draxian threat was broken permanently this time. Krell Carthon stood trial before a joint tribunal of the Galactic Council and Free Species Alliance. He was sentenced to life imprisonment,